So back when Pokemon Legends came out, a friend of mine had said something that honestly I can't stop thinking about, and I'm really hoping he's wrong, but that's basically the idea that Pokemon Legends might just be a one-off sort of thing like Pokemon Coliseum or XD, and we might never see a game like it again. And while there is an obvious difference between Legends since it was created by Game Freak and the two Array Pokemon games which were spin-offs, the idea that we might never receive another Legends game is definitely a possibility, and today I want to discuss why I think they should continue to make similar titles like it, even if it does seem that Pokemon Legends was sort of a testing ground for the new Pokemon formula that we see in Scarlet and Violet. We're going to be discussing that as well as some ideas that I have for future Pokemon Legends games and sort of how they could play out a little bit. Going to be a pretty casual discussion video, so sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Okay, so first of all, what is it about the Pokemon Legends format that sets it apart from other games in the series, even including Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which were sort of built upon its foundation? Well, there are actually a plethora of aspects, but I'll go over a few now. Firstly, and most importantly, are the real-time functions of the game. In Pokemon Legends, you're not just able to run around and explore the world, you're also given the ability to capture Pokemon in real time, as opposed to having to go into a turn-based battle every time you want to catch something. This makes it very seamless and in my opinion adds an entire new layer to the game. You can of course hop into battle and fight these enemies, or you could utilize stealth tactics, which I think is really cool, especially when you consider the added layer of Pokemon being able to attack you. Unlike a main series Pokemon game, Legends focuses much more on the collection aspect of Pokemon, with your in-game progression revolving around how many Pokemon you've been able to capture, and I think that's a really cool spin on it too. I wouldn't want the main series to function like this, however, I think a side series that will reoccur every so often would be a great break from the typical formula. Legends had its own unique take on the IV system, which I think is an improvement personally, since it really simplifies and expedites them in a way, and even its battles were kind of different, but I'm not a huge fan of the Swift and Strong style options, but I'll definitely take the new version of Sleep and Freeze any day. The setting of a Legends game being in the distant past was also a breath of fresh air, considering every Pokemon game has pretty much taken place in a modern setting with some technological advancements specific to the way Pokemon are captured and digitized. So with all that being said, why continue the Legends series? Isn't it just good enough to have Legends Arceus and call it a day? I mean, the whole premise of that game was the fact that the trainer was sent back in time. We can't just have a bunch of time-traveling protagonists, right? Well, time travel doesn't really need to be present. I mean, you could just as easily have someone who has grown up in an older Pokemon world and have the game revolve around that person's adventure, but I could see a lot of people saying that Hisui was like the first Pokedex, but the goal doesn't necessarily have to be completing the first Pokedex. You could very simply just be someone who's trying to fill out a specific regional dex, like how the kids in Generation 1 were doing so for Oak, which was actually the first Pokedex, but that was a retcon. I think there are a plethora of mythical and really noteworthy Pokemon that they could make Pokemon Legends games about, so much so that I actually did a video talking about what a Pokemon Legends Mewtwo and Mew could look like, which I highly recommend you check out. I put a ton of work into that video, really proud of it. But to keep a long story short, in that video I sort of talked about how a Pokemon Legends Mewtwo and Mew game could take place in a version of Kanto that isn't as dated as the Hisui region, but instead features a somewhat younger Oak and Fuji, and the creation of Kanto's first Pokedex alongside the creation of Mewtwo. Again, this would have to retcon the events of Red and Blue a little bit, since Oak only had 3 pages filled out in his Pokedex in those games, but I think this is such an interesting piece of the Pokemon world that it's a shame we don't have a game exploring it. But why stop there? We could easily have Legends games about Pokemon like Celebi, who could also tie into time travel, Jirachi and Deoxys, who could even have you travel to some sort of distant planet or the moon or something. That'd be pretty cool. Unova, which could have a really cool legend story, since there's the really rich lore of the region, and the 2 princes that were involved with the original dragon could be present. X and Y could feature that war that took place 3,000 years ago. I'm sure they could figure out a way to get around the whole Pokeball issue, whether it be introducing them from the future or whatever. Man, I could even see a Pokemon Legends game that throws you into prehistoric times where there aren't even humans, but just ancient Pokemon. And again, you could tie Celebi into that or something for an excuse to time travel. There are so many possibilities when it comes to Pokemon Legends, and having having them take place during different times in the Pokemon universe / history would be amazing. Hell, why stop at the past? Imagine a Pokemon Legends game that takes place in the future where we see a lot of those future Paradox Pokemon from Violet. I think that's another really cool way to explore the universe without breaking it and its history. To be honest, at some point, Pokemon remakes are going to be less and less special. We've already seen this with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and while they sold pretty well, I can't see this minimalistic type of remakes remaining viable forever. I don't really see hype around a potential Gen 6 or 7 remake, or hell, Gen 8 remake, which obviously would come in a few years when nostalgia can be garnered for those games, but I think the more modern Pokemon games become, they lose a lot of that early charm that came with the first 5 generations, at least in my opinion. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think that we should get more Pokemon Legends games that could sort of replace remakes in the Pokemon release schedule, or do you think Legends Arceus is just where we should sit? Definitely let me know down below, and if you do want to stay up to date on all things monster taming, definitely subscribe to my channel for daily monster taming videos. You can check out my Discord, Twitter, and Patreon linked below. Special thanks to the patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Dark Persona, Exodus, and Candy Morency, and I'll see you next time. Peace.